Hi, I'm Chrissy,
And I'm Jess.
and this is
Financial Progress. I am so excited. We have a special guest today, Nathalia from Chapina Building Wealth. Natalia empowers people to get out of debt, learn to save, and invest to find financial freedom.
welcome,
Welcome.
Nathalia.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for saying yes.
Yes, yes. We need the financial education and knowledge out there. So thank
Mhm.
you so much for just being here.
Yeah, of course. I'm
So,
ready to talk money. It's my favorite thing.
yes. So before any wisdom you want to share with our audience, we want to know more about you. What are your insights that you can share for your financial progress over the years?
So I'm the breadwinner in my family. So my husband has been a stay-at-home dad since 2017. I do have a full-time 9 to 5 job that I love and I don't plan on leaving, which I feel like is very different than a lot of people in
Mhm.
the financial community, at least that I'm a part of. And I think for my progress has been better than I thought. I'm almost at about 300,000 net worth right now, and I'm hoping to be at 500,000 by the time I'm
Yay.
40. So I'm
Yes.
excited.
Awesome.
Right now I am 36, so I have 4 years, and I definitely think I could do it.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I just feel stable and financially stable, not
Mhm.
mentally.
Yes.
Feel financially stable, secure, and like it's crazy because we just came back from a 2 week trip to Japan, and we
Wow.
did overspend, but it's not scary. Like it's literally not scary because I was like, I know exactly what to do. Like I'm not worried
Yes.
about this, and it's just such a different mental space to be in than I have ever been in my life. And so I really feel like right now I'm living in the after, like the
Mhm.
before was like my story of
Yes.
everything I've done, and like I'm living the after and I'm loving it.
It's so
So
Yes,
different now.
yeah.
so different. We
Hmm.
just recorded an episode about overspending in Puerto Rico because I just
Yes.
came back from Puerto Rico and I overspent. But like you said, I know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
I know how to get out of it, and
Yeah.
it's perfectly fine. And I don't regret any of it because I had an amazing time.
Same.
Yes.
100% same. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So, can you tell us how it started, like that progress, like your
Yeah,
beginning?
so it's crazy because, I think it took me a while to kind of get things going. And I think that's kind of normal for a lot of people. It's kind of like you start and you stop, you start and you stop,
Mhm.
right? So really the first year everything started for me was 2018. And what I did was I consolidated my credit card debt into a personal loan. And I consolidated 2 credit cards and I started paying it off, right? But I only did that. I didn't do anything else. I didn't budget. I didn't do anything else. So of course, what did I do? I maxed out a third credit card. So you
Mhm.
that was that. In 2019, I reconsolidated the 3 cards together, and at that point, I had started listening to this podcast called "So Money" by Farnoosh, and I
So
really started
money.
to learn a lot about money and things I've never heard before, things that, of course, I was never taught, I didn't never
Mhm.
knew about. And so that's what really kind of lit a fire under me. Not only that, but also from her podcast, learning about the budget mom and how she did her
Mhm.
budget by paycheck. And so I bought that planner that she had, and I started doing it. I started doing it. So 2019, I really started to budget. I really started to pay attention to my money budget. I had sat down and done an audit of my money
Mhm.
transaction for transaction. And at that time, we were living in like a studio apartment, and it was like rent was like $650. And I noticed that like I was spending about $600 a month by myself just on going out, with my friends and like having dinner and drinking. And I was like, what is happening? And I think that like shook me awake of like, what are you doing? Like, you have a family to support. Like, what is
Mhm.
happening? And so I think once I saw that, it really helped me learn, first of all, where I was going wrong, right? Where my money was going. And second, it's like, okay, you need to get it together.
Mhm.
So I started to budget in 2019. And then, March 2020 is when COVID hit. And so we were ordered to work from home full time. So I was home for about 2 years. And once I realized, like, okay, this isn't going to be like a 2 week thing, I sold my car. I paid off my student loans. And so just doing that cut out my car payment. Well, actually, I didn't have a car payment because I had already paid off, but my car insurance, it paid, my student loan payment. And so gas, all that stuff that comes with a car was cut. So we became a
Mhm.
one car family, which we still are. And I think being home, obviously not being able to do anything,
Mhm.
also helped that a little bit. But I really was just budgeting and paying attention and working on my money and learning. Also during COVID, I took an investment course. And then that just kind of pushed me forward into like, I'm obsessed with money now. Like I'm spending,
That's how it starts.
yeah,
Right.
like I was like, what is this? Like I realized from that course, I realized I was in a lot better place than I thought I was. At least with investing, not necessarily with debt, but like with investing, because I had started investing since I was 21. I just didn't understand it. I didn't know
Mhm.
what I was doing. Like
Same
I
here.
just listened to my mom. Yeah, like I was just like, my mom was like, put in your 401k. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what it meant. And I have this like very distinct memory when I set it up was like, I don't know, just do it so I don't have to do anything. Right?
Mhm.
Like that's what I told them. I was like, just I don't have to do anything. I don't want to do anything. And because I didn't understand, right? And I wasn't, and I think it was something scary at that when I set it up. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't like, I don't, nobody talks about investing in our family. Like, I didn't know anything. So I was just like, set it up. My mom told me to do it. So I'm going to listen.
Mhm.
But luckily I did. I think between my mom telling me that and then my coworkers who are older were older at the time and like they're attorneys and they told me they're like listen you need to put in at least up to 4% because we get two retirement accounts at work and so 4% in each so you could get the match. I was like okay, so I set up my 401k at 4%. I set up my 457b at 4%. Never looked at it, never touched it, and they were matching me the entire time, right? So I was just like until 2020 I had no idea what any of it meant.
Mhm.
So it's crazy because I listened, but at the same time, I still had no idea what was going on. And then finally, after that course, is when it all kind of came together, and I became credit card debt free in November of 2021. Proud of you.
Nice.
Well, shout out to
Congrats.
those coworkers who
Yeah,
inspired you and your mom to inspire you to start investing because that's
yeah,
amazing. Like,
yeah.
and not even knowing what
Mhm.
you're doing, like at that age, and just putting the
Hmm.
money away, and
Yeah,
that's a big step. And
yeah.
I know for me, I didn't understand what I was doing, and if I was struggling financially, I would lower my investment amount, my investment
Mhm.
rate. And looking back, I'm like, oh, if I hadn't understood this more, oh, that was such a big mistake. How much did that actually cost me? But
Yeah.
yeah, don't think about it right now. But
What's interesting is I didn't even understand that much. I didn't understand that like changing that percentage would affect. I didn't think into it at all, right? I
mhm,
just did what I was told. When my mom told me to put it in, I think I just set it up to some percentage, I don't even know what. And then when they told me 4%, that's all I did. 4% here,
mhm.
4% there, that's it, right? I didn't even understand like what it meant to put more, put less, like none of that really ever processed in my mind, which is wild.
By the way, I didn't know companies have two different accounts.
So I work for the government. Yeah, I work for the
Oh,
government.
nice.
So I actually get a pension. And
Okay.
because the way that we are contracted, my position at work, we do get access to two. So
Okay.
which is pretty cool because then really like they're giving me about 8% and I'm putting in. But I put in a
Yes.
lot because just the pension alone is like 9% of my paycheck. So I don't regret it now because I feel like
Mhm.
that because of all of that is giving me the ability to be able to retire not just me but my husband
Mhm.
and feel secure in what I'm doing, right? Because I'm not just investing there, I'm also investing outside of that now.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah, of
Do
course.
you do like the spousal retirement?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I set that up for him a couple years ago when I started to learn about everything. So the spousal Roth IRA. And so one thing I think most people don't know is that if you go looking on like a Fidelity website, you're not going to see spousal Roth IRA, right? It's
Mhm.
just going to be Roth IRA, and then you open it under like as them as a beneficiary, and you're just the
Mhm.
one putting money into it. We are legally married, so I can do that. So my income can go into his retirement. Yeah. And so he has his own account that I manage myself.
Mhm.
And that I, kind of have picked the investments in it. So at least he has something. I feel it's important for him to have something of his own. I feel like, you know, he
Yes.
made the big sacrifice of like staying home and being the parent for so many years. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like the least I could do is set him up for his future. Even though you never know what's going to happen, right? Like, and I always encourage stay-at-home parents because a lot of the stay-at-home parents are moms, right? My friends who are stay-at-home moms, I'm like, tell your husband or talk to
Mm-hmm.
him about doing this for you, because what happens when retirement time comes? Like, what
Yeah.
is your plan, or what happens if you don't stay together? Like, what's going to happen? So I try to encourage them to do it on their own a lot.
Okay. That's amazing though.
Yeah.
She's racking it up in all different places.
Yes.
Yeah. Can't
Yes.
diversify it, you know?
Yes.
Amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are there any setbacks that you encountered, and how did you like prioritize any of your goals and overcoming them?
So there's definitely been setbacks. I think, you know, because my daughter, you know, she's 7 now, but back then she was like 3, 4. You know, things are constantly changing. And so we have to put more money into things for her
Mm-hmm.
sometimes than others, right? Like classes or like this and that. And so I constantly had to like rebalance all of our money to be able to make it work, right? And so I felt at sometimes I was limited because I only made my money from my 9 to 5, right? Like that was it. My paycheck
Mm-hmm.
is very set. It's not going to change, you know. And so when I started my business, right, my financial coaching business, it didn't start out really with much. It was like at max, if I was lucky, I would make $500 a month. That's max. And that was on a good month, right? And
Mm-hmm.
once I started seeing the potential there and I started to learn about, you know, charging my value and things like that. And then I started to see really the potential that something like that could do. And I saw the potential that like entrepreneurship could have and being able to make more money. Because if it was just my 9 to 5, I'd be super limited, super,
Mm-hmm.
super limited. And having that additional income helps us be able to meet our goals faster, helps us able to do more than, you know, being limited within our budget, right, with the 9 to 5. So, you know, and also like very normal setbacks of like unexpected expenses that you don't always are like, oh my gosh, even my emergency fund took me time to build because
Mm-hmm.
I had to balance paying all our bills and also paying off the debt. And I had to balance all of those things. So it's not like my emergency fund just like grew overnight or in a year. It took me a little while to build it up. And so, because our priorities were constantly changing, I wasn't always able to save as much as I would have wanted to, right? Or invest as much. And so, I just had to like accept those fluctuations and know that like there's going to be seasons where we are able to save and invest a lot, and there's going to be seasons where it might not be as much as I want to, but at least I know that we are doing something, right? And so it always helps me to look at the numbers. And when I look at my paycheck and I look what I contribute into, you know, my investments, it always helps me, right? Like I was looking at it yesterday, and I think year to date, I'm already at over $11,000 invested. And so I'm like, and that's just at my 9 to 5. So I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that feels better, right? Like it makes me feel
Mm-hmm.
better. But it's just life, you know,
Mm-hmm.
life keeps
It
going and
happens.
things keep happening, and you just have to like adjust, I think, your expectations and not be tough on yourself, because especially when you're the breadwinner, because there's only so much you could do as one person, you know, and you can't have like, you know, these like shame parties for yourself when you don't meet your own expectations, or else you won't keep going, you know, it'll
Mm-hmm.
just be kind of like a breakdown. I think that's been the biggest things, honestly, because everything else has been pretty smooth as far as like, you know, going back to work and things like that. It's all really just a mental game, honestly. Once
Mm-hmm.
your numbers are done and the plan is set, it's all a mental game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, when are you gonna, you know, meet your goals, and like what's affecting you? For me, I always tell my clients like, what's affecting you right now? Like for me, usually it's my mental health, and like if I'm burnt out or not. Like that affects my ability to save more because I'm usually spending more out of like
Yes.
necessity for my survival, honestly.
Yes.
So it's like a constantly going wave, and you just kind of have to ride it and trust yourself and look at the bigger picture, right?
Mm.
Not just be focused on like 1 month or 2 month that you don't do the best.
Yeah, so important to give yourself some grace
Yeah.
and do whatever you can to maintain that mental stability, because I am a retail therapy addict sometimes, and that is where I go to to kind of relieve some stress. So let's get into how you paid off debt making under $100,000. Can we talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that story?
So yeah, I never realized how little I made until I started to pay attention. And even now I'm like, geez, I still feel like we need to get paid more, especially because I live in Southern California and
Mm.
100K here
Oh
is a
yeah.
drop in the bucket, right? Especially for a family of three. Now, we are very lucky that we get to rent from family. So our rent is like a lot lower than most places would be, right? But we still, have to keep up somehow. And so it's still tight, especially with the prices going up lately. But really, I think there was a combination of a variety of things. And I think the biggest impact for me to be able to pay off the debt was financial education. The more I learned about the importance of an emergency fund and uh, the possibilities of what I could do. I remember so clearly, like what I would focus. I At one point I was paying $655 a month to debt. Okay, this was to my loan because I was like trying to pay it off, and I was just imagining like what I would do with that $655. Like I was like envisioning like fat stacks of savings.
Right.
I, like I kept envisioning like what I was gonna do with this money when it wasn't going to debt. And
Mhm.
you know, between that, keeping an eye on my expenses, I'm tracking very carefully. I'm still a very avid tracker, and just paying attention to what's going on when I start seeing trends of like, oh, we're spending too much or like we're getting a little too comfortable. Let's rein it in a little bit and like keep it on check and try to do something else, right? I actually just had this conversation with my husband recently because we did overspend in Japan. And I told him, I was like, how about like instead of her doing the gymnastics right now when she's on summer break, we go and do the things that we already paid for. Because we prepay for like annual memberships for Knott's Berry Farm. And then we have like a zoo pass. I was like, let's go do the things we've already paid for and like not pay for new things. Like let's use up these things that we're
That's
so
a good idea.
yeah, just things like
Mhm.
that because it's like her gymnastics can get really expensive and right now she's on summer break. So I'm like, let's just
Mhm.
like do some more family stuff right now while we're all home. And then we'll do that later. So just little changes like that can have a big effect. And I think when I was really trying to watch my expenses, what helped me a lot is like making a list of things that I could do that filled my cup that didn't cost money. So like going
Yes.
out to hike with friends and taking my daughter, or just having like a picnic in the back, more things at home really. That really helped us kind of rein it in as far as like being able to save more. But I think between budgeting, balancing my goals, because I had to not just pay off the debt, but also start my emergency fund, start my sinking funds, and all of that. And then that helps you stay out of debt, right? So just there's one part of getting out of debt as far as paying the debt you owe. And the second part is not creating new debt. And
Yes.
so by doing my sinking funds, my emergency fund, I was able to continue to keep us out of debt. So it's always like a work in progress. I think in total, I would say I would say 5 years, but if you're like, 2019, 2021, those 3 years made the biggest difference. And I made some very drastic changes in the beginning when COVID hit. And I think that helped us get ahead more. So if you're in a situation where you can do something like that, right? Because I have heard of families who like get a trailer to live in the in-laws like yard so that they can cut down
Mhm.
housing expenses, right? Like if you're in a situation like that where you're living at home and you don't have to pay rent maybe, or your expenses are super low right now, I would say take advantage of that situation and like take it upon yourself to save and invest more during that time. Because that's like your highlight right there of like, let's go hard now. Because when your expenses do go up, like most people's do, it's going to be a lot harder to go backwards, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's where we really did it right. Is like we saw what was happening and we said, okay, let's settle into the new normal. and we cut out as much as we could. I called in for our other car. I called into my insurance and let them know I was working from home. And so I lowered my mileage, therefore lowering how much our insurance cost. Just things like that. We recently even changed over phone companies so that we could pay even less. We were with Verizon. They were charging like 150 for like the two phones. And now we're paying like literally 105 or something with T-Mobile. So just things like that, really, the big items that are taking from you is really where you gotta focus. Because people think it's, oh, my Starbucks or like
Yeah.
my little eating out here and there, or you might not know. I remember we sat down with a client and we were tracking their expenses, and they had spent like $800 on snacks.
Wow.
I know. but so when you
But
track, you
it,
see what the reality is, right? You
mhm,
think it's one thing, but it might be something else. And
it's
I think that's
eye-opening.
always like, it is. And that's what you need to do. You need to like look at your reality instead of what you think you're doing,
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes those trips to the vending machines, especially if they take cards, like you don't
Mhm.
even realize that how much that adds up. So until you're actually looking at that and budgeting, putting that in your budget, that's when you
Yeah.
actually see what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you stay organized with your finances?
I have a beautiful spreadsheet.
I
So
love spreadsheets.
yeah, so I love the Budget Moms workbook, but one thing I hated was that it was in writing. And so I created my own on Excel with formulas because I was like, I don't want to do math. Like, I don't want to be sitting
Mm-hmm.
here writing and figuring out and adding. I was like, let me just do the Excel for it. And so Excel does the
Mm-hmm.
math for me. But now in the last year or two, I've used a dashboard that I purchased from my wealth diary. And so I use her dashboard, which has beautiful charts and a little thing
Mm.
for everything, like sinking funds and credit card points, all kinds of stuff. So I use that now. That's how I organize all my money. I have one spreadsheet just for like my main budget of like, this is what my plan is. And then the other one is for my tracking and to see my progress, my net worth, where my numbers are going. Yeah.
That's good to know. I still use a spreadsheet as well, but I'm gonna look into the dashboard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, my wealth diary, her dashboards are awesome. I love the charts. That's why I like to get them because I like to see, okay, like, 30% on wants and like, okay, 20% on needs. Okay, like I can live with that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it gives you a different perspective. I feel like, when you see the bigger numbers instead of just like, oh, I'm spending so much money eating out, but then you look at it in the bigger picture and it's like, but it's not that much.
Yeah.
So that really helps me. And I do have a discount code if you want it, Jess.
Send it over. I'm willing to check it out. Do you also use spreadsheets with your clients?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I do
So
the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, I teach them how to do their budget on my spreadsheet that I created with the budget by paycheck. And pretty
Yes.
much for all of them, it's worked out. I think only one client already had her own, and if they have their own, then we work with that. But for the
Mhm.
most part, we use the spreadsheet that I did.
What is the most important wisdom you would like to leave our audience?
Yeah. And I think we talked a little bit about this, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
honestly, the three main things that got me through like all those years of like just watching my money and being super careful because there was a time where I did have to worry about, overspending or not being able to pay off credit cards or any of that, right? It was just like one is, focusing on reality, right? Like really looking at what you are doing instead of what you think. So that means looking closely at your numbers, using real numbers for your budget, not rough estimates or things you think, right? Looking at your reality. And second is being graceful with yourself and like not taking it too hard. Like I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm gonna pay off debt in a year, I'm gonna pay off debt in 6 months, right? Like if I just hone in. And you have to like, hello, you need to be able to live your life. You don't just want to stick your head in the sand and not do anything else, right? So I
Yes.
think that comes to my third one is like fill in joy into what you're doing. During the whole time that like I've been doing this, we've still taken trips, we've still gone out to eat, I've still gone to Starbucks countless times. Like it's not about not buying anything, right? It's about being intentional with where your money's going and not spending on
Mm-hmm.
things that you don't ever use or really want or don't mean anything to you. Really spend the money where you want it and plan, right?
Mhm.
Like plan it out as much as you can. I think I was sitting yesterday on my planner, just kind of outlining the highlights of the next few months, like December, my anniversary, Christmas, to start like thinking
Mhm.
about how to save for that is a game changer. The sooner you start to save for goals, the easier it's going to be to meet them, and you won't be frantic the last minute.
Mhm.
Definitely.
So I think those three things is just focusing on reality and giving yourself grace with your goals and understanding
Yes.
that life is life, and then filling in that joy into your plan.
Yep.
Yes. Beautifully
That's
said.
perfect.
Love
Yeah.
Yeah.
it. Yes. Yes, I just wanted to give a little disclaimer that this is just a conversation between friends. This is not financial advice in any way. Please seek the help of a financial advisor before making any financial decisions. Nathalia, I just want to thank you so much for being here. We really enjoyed your story, and thank you so much for sharing it with us and our
Thank you.
audience.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Well, until next time, everyone. See ya.